Well, good morning. It's good to be with you on this Thursday morning as we continue together in our time in Luke. Hope you are great today. I've had a great week, and I look forward to a wonderful Thursday. Today we're going to be reading from Luke chapter 8. Be reading verse 22 through 25. Verse 22 through 25. One day when he got into a boat with his disciples, he said to them, "Let us go across to the other side of the lake." So they put out, and while they were still sailing, he fell asleep. A windstorm swept down on the lake, and the boat was filling with water, and they were in danger. They went to him and woke him up, shouting, "Master, Master, we are perishing." And he woke up and rebuked the wind and the ravaging waves, and they ceased, and there was calm. He said to them, "Where's your faith?" They were afraid and amazed, and said to one another, "Who is this, that he commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him?" Spoiler, well, sort of spoiler. Well, this is a story that we see in all the Gospels. I'm actually preaching on the Matthew version of this text next week. Funny enough, I actually wrote that sermon for the 31st yesterday. I write my sermons about a week ahead of time, so I actually write a sermon on them usually on a Friday, but I had some time yesterday where I didn't have a lot really right on top of me, and my Friday looks pretty busy this week. So I said, well, I'd rather take my time and write the sermon today, and that way I don't have to worry with it Friday. So I wrote my sermon for next week yesterday. I'm saying all that to say I'm actually preaching on the Matthew version of this text in 2 weeks. I feel like I'll spend a fair amount of time with this text this week, which is kind of good for me because I've got a few storms blowing in my life right now. So it was maybe the Lord's trying to tell me something by making me meditate upon this text a lot. There are some structural differences with Matthew's version versus Luke's version regarding primarily the details Matthew includes about before they leave and what's happening there, and then what Jesus said. Jesus in Matthew's gospel kind of calms the disciples first and then does the water, where in Luke's he does the water first and the disciples. But it's the same story basically, and you see the story is getting as the point of this story. We read the story and we want to focus on the calm, and that's where we're gonna go back to the calm in a second. But for both Matthew and Luke in this story, the thing both of them want you to understand is what happens at the end when the disciples say, "Who is this that he commands even the winds and the waters, and they obey him?" They want Luke and Matthew are trying to get you to understand the overwhelming power and authority of Jesus. Whoa. And that is, we can vacillate in our faith sometimes. And I think it all depends on where we come from. And let me tell you what I mean by that. If you grew up with a God who is big, like if your home church or your experience with religion started you off really focusing upon how powerful and mighty and strong and amazing God is, you may need to read and understand the intimate personal nature of God. That God is, yes, He is sovereign, He is big, He is strong, but He's also personal. He's also intimate. He also comes to you in the still small whisper. It's got to balance those things out. That's when we vacillate. If you grew up in a church or have a religious experience that emphasizes the personal nature of God, that He knows the hairs upon your head. He knows your fears, your doubts, your worries. He knows the intimate part of who you are. That He knows you so well. If that's what you grew up with, then you may need to be reminded of the fact that He is omnipotent and powerful and strong, and that He's more than just your best friend. He's the sovereign God of creation. So if you grew up with the focusing upon God's vastness and might, you need to be reminded that He's your best friend. If you grew up with Him being your best friend, you need to be reminded that He is sovereign and mighty. And so I grew up with the big mighty strong smite you down God. So I love reading the things that remind me of his personal love and his personal nature and how loving he is. I like that. That's what really impacts me. But it is really good in our faith, no matter where we are in our faith, to be reminded of the question the disciples asked. Who is this? Who is this that he commands even the winds and the waters and they obey him? Who is this? One of my favorite books by the great Danish philosopher Soren Kierkegaard is a book called Fear and Trembling. And it basically ponders the question of what are we to do with the God that we see in Abraham and Isaac? What are we to do with this God? And Kierkegaard's ultimate answer was we are to approach this God with fear and trembling, that this God's different than us. And we need to be reminded of who God is, how mighty he is, how strong he is, how he is more than just that closeness and personalness. But he's God. He's God. And we don't need to tread on his holiness. We don't need to take for granted his holiness. We don't need to just take that for granted or forget about it or not think about it. But we need to understand that yes, he's small. He is a still small whisper, but he's God. He's God. And particularly if your faith focuses upon the intimate walk with the closeness of God, don't forget how big he is. Don't forget how big he is. Don't be afraid. First off, to ask bold prayers. Don't be afraid to really ask God for what you need or what you want. Don't be afraid to ask God for the bold prayers and ask the hard questions, the big things. Ask it of God. But then I think when we understand how big and strong and mighty God is, it's even more amazing that we get to know him so close and personal. I always love Isaiah 6, where Isaiah meets God in the temple and he says ultimately, woe is me, for I'm a man of unclean lips, and I live amongst the people of unclean lips, and my eyes have seen the Lord God of hosts. Woe is me. Yeah, when you understand how mighty God is. And then what happens? God comes to him and God touches him. When we see Jesus in a few chapters at the Mount of Transfiguration, we see Jesus in his glory. We see how holy he is, how mighty he is. And what does the psalmist say? What is man that you are mindful of us? A little low, maybe you made us a little lower than the angels. What a holy God we serve. What a holy God we serve. The mountains quake, the oceans roar. He hems in the sea from side to side. He made all that is, both seen and unseen. He spoke light into being. He spoke all things into being. He is the God of creation. And so understand God's power today. You know, eh, Sometimes our problems seem so big, don't they? Sometimes our worries seem so big. Sometimes our issues seem so big. I know mine do often. I know oftentimes I feel overwhelmed by things that probably aren't even really that important. They sure feel important to me in that moment. Understand the vastness of God. Who is this? Who is this that he commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him? Never doubt the mystery of God and the vastness of God and the strength of God and the power of God and the might of God. He's God. He's God. Don't forget that. Don't forget that. Let's celebrate the intimate walk we have with him. But let's remember how big he is and how strong he is and how mighty he is and that he is God. He is God. So, hey, thanks for being with us today as we continue in Luke, and I'll look forward tomorrow to looking at one of my favorite passages in all the Bible. This is a cool passage we're going to talk about next. So we see how great God is. We're going to see his great. We're going to see Jesus' greatness displayed out in this next great story. So, thanks for being with us. Have a great rest of your day.